Hey everybody, it's Alicia Panzarella. We're here today to kind of review two documents. So a Word document, or in my case, it'll be a Google Doc, and a PowerPoint, which will be on the next video, to see how they stack up for differentiation for all learners, how it kind of compares to the UDL, and our web accessibility. And I will say that after reviewing kind of those three different resources that my documents kind of fail. Um, to be upfront and honest, I've never had um, a student with an IEP. I've had GIEPs and a couple 504s, but I've never had a group of students with IEPs. I'm not sure if it's just because of the subject I teach, the level, but it hasn't happened. So I haven't been forced to kind of think about really how I'm presenting this information beyond, okay, differentiation in terms of content and activities, and not really on the side of, okay, is this helpful to everyone? And kind of the main thing that I took away from the UDL is really that, yes, you're doing this because you're thinking about one person, but in the grand scheme of things, it's helping everybody in different ways. So I really kind of got to take a hard look at some of the materials that I give my students because I wasn't really happy with myself after looking at some of these documents. So I figured might as well do my video on things that I gave today. So this is my AP class. They have a lab practicum and an exam this week. So the lab practicum, which is a lab-based assessment, is tomorrow, and then their test is on Friday. So today was kind of a review day. Now, one of the things that I do think did line up to some extent with the UDL. In terms of engagement, the students did have choice today on what they chose to do, and then anything left over they could do for homework or during enrichment. So they had three things. They had a practice practicum, so they can practice their lab skills, a review that was just kind of qualitative and quantitative in nature. So this is one of their documents. As you can see, not really stacking up too high on our web accessibility, but it asks questions in multiple different ways. So we have our quantitative and our qualitative. And then they also had multiple choice questions that were located in AP's College Board classroom. So like I said, they're multiple choice. One or two of them were kind of like short answer, but still had a multiple choice component to it. So they had a couple different things that they could choose to do. So they had choice. They do have a couple variety for resources under that engagement category. And we do have physical action. I do try to optimize the tools that we have, not always so much with technology, but we did need, obviously, this resource. We had the AP College Board classroom, which was another technology tool. And in order to do the lab practicum, they do use an application. They use Huddle Technique, which is a slow motion app. If you've ever felt the need to get a slow motion app, Huddle Technique is by far my favorite. So really, we only have those couple pieces that stack up with the UDL. And from the presentation aspect, when they're doing the lab practicum, they do have to decode mathematical notation. So we have that piece. But again, I'm not hitting as much as I would probably like to hit. So probably the document that I want to look at was their main focus today because most students chose to do the practice practicum. And as far as supporting learners with special needs, I don't think this would have been the best assignment, especially not if a student has a special need that is physically related. So what they had to do pretty much, and it would be helpful if I had a picture there rather than just a clip art trolley, Um, they had a ramp. There was a trolley car at the top of the ramp. A constant velocity car was on the floor. So we had the ramp coming down, the buggy car coming this way, and they needed to figure out when they were going to collide. So the buggy car was released first, and then the trolley car was released sometime later, which they had to figure out. And then once they figured out the time to release, then they were able to figure out when and where they were going to collide. And it's all math based. They can take any measurements that they want, but it is still math based, applying those concepts. So in order to do that, it does pretty much require you to get on the floor, to move around. You pretty much couldn't do the lab as it was if you were not able to move. Now, that could be differentiated. I could give a student the different measurements, but like I said, I haven't had the case, so I haven't done it. So taking a look then at our accessible Word documents. One, I realized that in terms of headers, I pretty much just make things either bigger or smaller. I didn't kind of realize to use these different heading options. And I know that we should use heading 1 only once, and then everything else should kind of be used throughout. But as we can see, I didn't do that. I just kind of have a tendency to make things bigger, smaller, bold, and underlined, which isn't always helpful. You can also see that I didn't vary any colors. It's pretty much just black and white, which is not going to be super accessible in terms of reading. And if someone has a disability that deals with color blindness, this may not always be helpful. One thing that would have been helpful is instead of this delightful clip art picture, if I would have put a picture or a diagram of the actual setup, which would have been really easy to do, and I'm not sure why I didn't do that. It's kind of one of those things I didn't think about until I'm in a setting like this where you're forced to. So that would have been helpful. If I would have given the diagram, I could have put text boxes with the diagram that say this is your starting line for your buggy car, this is your starting line for your trolley car, and it would have been a really good visual aid. And honestly, had I done that, I probably wouldn't have gotten as many questions as I did. So this could have been a really helpful resource for not only the students, but myself as well, because I was answering the same question over and over, when if I just would have had a better visual, that wouldn't have happened. Um, so yeah, like I said, I didn't really use any color to help here. Kind of going on to some of the other things, my imaging, that could have been better. And I don't really have anything else. I have lists, which they're, yes, in the bullet points, but they're also really smushed together, which could be difficult. So I could put more spaces between them, more distinctions. But yeah, right now we can kind of see that this is not the most accessible document. In the future, I do think it would be helpful to really kind of look at the documents that we've been given, see how my documents stack up, and kind of rework how I display a lot of the things in terms of my objective, my rules. This really is just smushed all together. So I could do a much better job of spacing it, using a different color scheme to make it easier to see if students need that, as well as fixing my image to make it actually purposeful rather than just look at the pretty clip art. So as we can kind of see, unfortunately, I think I've fallen short on this document, but I'm going to take the different things that we've learned and hopefully get a little bit better with that.